Welcome back to the Deep Plea. This episode is on modern mental health. My name is Karthik. The guy on the other side of the mic is Sven,
Hello, hello.
and he's gonna start us off with the quote for today.
Yes, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I'm going to butcher this. Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Yeah,
uh,
Krishnamurti.
yeah. So this quote, I think, pretty much is completely encompasses all the things we value in cultures and things we do that kind of evoke these behaviors that we would consider people to be mentally ill or unhealthy mentally. I think if you look at something like schools where kids, if they can't sit down for 8 hours straight, they're giving a medication, they're giving a pill. Not to say that ADHD isn't real, it's just overdiagnosed, which has been researched in the past. Usually the signs are more prevalent in adults, and you can tell more there. Then you look at schools with bullying, and then kids get sad or depressed, and they're giving medication for that. And the idea is that they're just conforming to the system rather than the system changing. And it's like that one song, I forget what it's called, but it's like you shouldn't have to change the world; should change their heart. Where it's like we're just conforming to a really bad system that's grotesque, and that can put people into a lot of bad places mentally. And then we just kind of try and band aid it up rather than trying to create systems in which people operate better. What do you think,
Yeah,
Garth?
I think if we try and define a sick society, that probably means something along the lines of like people generally are. I think the level of happiness among most people is probably declining. I think that's a good way
Yeah.
to kind of say a sick society. And uh, the quote says it is no measure of health, but I think you could also say it's no measure of wealth as well,
Right.
because we may be advancing technologically, uh, we might be getting new alternate realities, but if our own reality is quote unquote sick, then, that's not a good baseline to build off of, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely get that. I think we don't really look for systems. We don't look for the change. Like I'm saying, we look for the chemical solution, the pills, but we never really actually look around to see how we can operate better as a community. And I think it also is interesting how you could go to 100 psychiatrists and you could tell the psychiatrist, hey, I'm feeling this way. This is how I'm feeling, and you're going to have a lot of different diagnoses across all those psychiatrists, and it's not as black and white, or it's not as obvious as if you go in and you have a broken finger and the doctor's like, okay, I can see this, it is a broken finger, I know how to fix it. But because mental health is a spectrum of issues that can't really be put under the lens, for example, we have a difficult time actually assessing and diagnosing those types of things and getting proper treatment. And I think that plays a big role when people take medications and then they have side effects that can make things worse, or give them even new problems. And of course, it does work for people. But I think that that is also a big problem because then people may actually start taking medications to stop those symptoms. And it just becomes a cycle where you're taking a pill a day for all these different things that are just, that you're doing to yourself.
Or yeah, like like maybe we're young people and we have a whole, like they have that like tablet or like the little like sheet thing with like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or like they
Right.
have the days, and usually associate those with like older people who have like more, I guess, more problems. But if we're having that, that can't be a good thing.
Right now, I'm thinking like to kind of visualize it. You go into the doctor, and let's just say you had a broken finger, and you're like, "I think I have a broken finger," and he's like, "Hmm." He's like, "I think you need insulin," and you take insulin, right? Because mental health, you can't see it, so it's just kind of like an analogy. And then so you're taking the insulin, but your finger's still broken, and there's pain. And then so maybe the insulin actually will cause problems, and you're going to take something else for that. But the whole time your finger's still broke. It's kind of like the same idea when you have seeing these things. But
Yeah, if we, I'll maybe put one of my friends on blast. One of my friends was taking this like not medication, it's like over the counter, but for like decreasing cortisol levels, so stress.
okay,
And I was like, okay, I've never heard of this thing before. Let me do a little research. And I came across this one. I mean, it's just a website. It's not like a hard research study, but it was like, oh, doing this thing can be helpful. But the most helpful thing in the end will be the long-term like steps that you take in order
yeah.
to try and fix your problems, not the little gummy or whatever it might be that you take in the short term, but it'll be the
Right.
long-term fixes that will be most beneficial.
Yeah, it's also like you go into the doctors and instead of, the first thing they should be saying is, are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? Are you like they don't even ask you that. They're just kind of like, okay, we'll just give you this.
Mm,
But there's these things that people can do naturally to help boost, their behaviors or whatever, but they don't
definitely.
really tell you to do that.
Yeah. So let's go to the easy question for today. What has changed from the last generation to the current generation for more cases of mental health? I think I'd like to take a quick segue into, like I've talked about this before, environment versus willpower. So I think our environment is a lot different nowadays than it has or than it was in the past, excuse me.
Yeah,
So we have social media, we have various forms of stimulation, might be, slowly altering those neurons back there, um, perhaps leading down to, a slippery slope of addiction and more problems. Um, so I think just like generally people's environments nowadays are not as like they're more geared towards instant gratification, which doesn't really have good it doesn't have benefits for mental health, at least in definitely doesn't in the long term. I could say
yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? So we want to make sure we focus on the long term, how we can better ourselves, not just the short term. And then I will link this in the description. I read this study. It's just one study, but I read it and it sounded cool, so we're gonna talk about it. So they were talking about things such as social integration being a main factor of mental health. So um, we can like ponder on the idea or of whether or not social integration is harder in the modern era. Um, let's say real connection. So if we're
Yeah,
always searching for friends online, we might be getting some social integration, but it might not be the core of what humans need at a primal level. And then
yeah,
something else I saw was called social stratification, are places where people feel equal in a sense. So I think social media does a bad job at this because it gives you this utopian ideal of everybody has their own community, but also like where they can have social integration, but also there's huge levels of just simple inequality on there, whether that be in beauty standards or wealth or muscular physique or what have you. Sven,
yeah,
what do you have to say about this question for
yeah.
today?
Yeah, even like you mentioned, like the environment and like the electronics and tablets. Like when I go to the gym and I do my set and I'm like having a cool down in between, I can just look down at my phone and like I don't have to look up and socialize with people. It's like an immediate escape. And you do that enough, you'll develop social anxiety because when you're done your set, you could just look at your phone and now you're preoccupied with that. Whereas if you think about it, like in the past, people working out gym when they're on cool down, they're sitting there looking around. They're actually like there's some level of engagement ready to go. When someone's looking at their phone, it's kind of like, hey, don't talk to me, I'm doing something. It's kind of this comfort spot that you can do. And then like if you think about putting yourself in situations like presenting is very people hate presenting, and I'm one of those people as well. And it's because your adrenal glands they just fire away, and you get like shaky and you get nervous. And I kind of have my own little theory about this was that in the past, growing up or like evolving, um, the only time it was you had a bunch of people looking at you was usually because you're about to go into like a war, like a tribal war. It usually wasn't common for a bunch of eyes to just be looking, or you got captured by another tribe. And so I think that actually when you go up and present, you have all these people looking at you. Your body kind of has this reaction to like fight or flight kind of thing. And there's people that actually take adrenal block, and I think that when it comes to modern mental health and it comes to taking medications, like for that, for example, the best thing you can do to actually face that issue is to present more often and do it again. And then the 120th time, you're going to just be like, can I get this over with? Like, I'm bored. You know, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's just about doing things for the long term.
and
Uh,
facing the adversity over and over again till you accomplish.
yeah, I mean, you could argue life is just one adversity, one hill to another, right?
Well, yeah,
Just doing,
struggle to survive.
it's right. So now ask the hard question for today. Dun dun dun. All right. Anyways, in this modern mental health crisis, how can we make sure we don't mislabel ourselves to have a specific mental condition that we don't necessarily have? So as Sven said earlier, he gave the analogy of going to the doctor, right? So,
Oh yeah,
you know, we know if a finger is broken. We can take an x-ray and we say, oh, this bone right here, it's broken. But maybe we can take some MRI or actually I don't even know what the brain scan is called, but like you can't really tell if a neuron is broken in that same way. Um, we can just kind of infer, like we could say, oh, there's a probability that you might have this, but if we take this X-ray, oh, you know that your leg is broken, your finger is broken. Um, and if we don't like, if we don't try the first steps that Sven also talked about, like, are you getting enough exercise? Are we,
Yeah,
are we not sedentary? Uh, do we, get good levels of social integration, social stratification, right?
sunlight.
Do we try and, yeah, integrate ourselves in society? Do we try and find a nice group that we like? Um, do we try and, I guess, like support ourselves in that journey? It's not just about let me just go outside and like I don't know, just find some people and like wave at them. But it's like
Right,
let me figure out what I like and then let me try and find other people who are the same. Let me go in the same situations, the same like if I like going to the gym, let me go to the gym and try and find some people there. Um, and unless we get like a right, or unless we get like a proper diagnosis, there's a test called the MMPI-2, which calculates your basically your individual personality. I mean, first of all, it's very expensive, but second of all, uh, there's probably still a probability with that. So I guess at
yeah,
the end of the day, we just try and do our best in this realm. Like, and we don't want
yeah,
to. I mean, obviously, sometimes we're gonna have problems. We might be depressed some days. We might
and that's
be,
normal.
yeah, we might be anxious giving a presentation, right?
Right, exactly.
But we don't want to see other people, all of our friends are saying, "Oh, I have this problem, I have this problem." Hopefully, we don't also kind of just, I don't, how do I say, like, just say we have a problem just to fit in.
Yeah, yeah. Going off of even though you're talking about mislabeling ourselves or like what we think, there's probably a lot of people that have thought that they had depression. Let's say their dog died and they got really depressed. It's a normal thing to be depressed, but society's kind of just said if you're depressed then you need to get help. Um, Obviously, people have chronic depression, which is just for no reason. But this person might go, get a pill, take it, and then that actually might cause them to actually then develop a real neurological issue or hormone issue in which they actually then do get a real problem. So if someone takes SSRIs, serotonin uptake or reuptake inhibitors, I think let's say they actually had a normal amount of serotonin, but they started taking this. Now you're having this androgynous form of serotonin going into your brain. And then when you stop taking it, well, I should say first that your brain will adjust and it'll just start relying on the androgynous source and stop producing its own, or at least produce less. Same thing happens when people take testosterone. And so when you stop taking it, now you actually do have a serotonin deficiency. And now you actually have a real mental health issue that's like brain chemistry, and that was put onto yourself by thinking that you needed to take something to then change and it cause a chain reaction. And then because of that, you start taking other things and it causes more chain reactions. And then your hormones can get busted. And we don't even know the first thing about treating any of this. So now you're just going down a spiral staircase,
Yeah.
and you're just hitting your head on every step.
You just, I'm just imagining a person just
Boom.
like bonking their head on every step, just falling down, like upside down.
taking that, taking the next medication to make them feel better as they're going down each
Oh,
way.
damn. You really calling some people out. But I guess like I want to just add quickly that, we can give ourselves these problems and like I guess, the pill or like, the instant gratification always seems easy. Um,
Yeah.
but it's usually, I'll say usually, but
Right.
never the right like avenue of attack for an issue. And there's
Uh,
always things that we can change. Like, for example, if you just want more time in the day, a lot of people say they don't have time to do X, Y, or Z. But if you really went out there and tried to find it, you could find it. Like, you could cut off your YouTube time. You could cut off, you could eat quicker. You could do so many things to, I just get more time to do what you want to do. Sven,
Yeah.
final
Yeah, I think
thoughts.
to yeah, final thoughts. I think, what we're saying is with modern mental health, usually these are onset by environmental things and things around us that have developed. We're not saying, of course, medications can work for people, and then people that actually do have chemical imbalances, it works for them, and people, actually do get better on these medications. But when it comes to having it put onto you by society or by whatever it is, usually those things are reversible without having to take a brain altering medication.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And just work for the long term, people,
Yep.
'cause that's where you'll be living, the long term.
Right. You'll find yourself one day, time is flying by, and you'll be like, "Oh, I've arrived. I'm here. I've always been here."
That's deep.